All right. All right, Chris. Well, listen, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on with us today. We have Chris. Um, is it Bogue? Is that how you pronounce your last name, or is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, very
Chris
good.
Bogue.
But Chris Bogue, and I've got a lawnmower going on outside right now. That's great. Can you hear that?
Nope,
Yeah.
sounds good to
Okay.
me.
All right. So, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've enjoyed watching your comedy show on Thursday nights. Last week was awesome. The show that you all did on improv, thought it was a great show. How did you get into improv originally?
I've been doing it ever since I was a little kid. I would watch Whose Line Is It Anyway
Oh, I love that show.
on, yeah, and I just wanted to do it. So I would just, my friends and I would just kind of like start doing the games ourselves. I did it in college. We got really into that. I started doing kind of more complex stuff, improvised musicals, improvised sitcoms, improvised full-length plays. And then I was born and raised in the city of Chicago. So I've just done a lot of the comedy here. I did shows at Chicago's Second City Theater, which is where a
Famous.
lot of SNL came from. Yeah.
Right.
Um, and I've also done like a lot of weird kind of experimental theater throughout the city. So I've done a lot of being on stage. I've done a lot of performing, and I've like figured out a way to adapt that to like B2B.
Right. Well, I think sometimes we take ourselves too seriously in B2B. And that was something that I worked on a script this weekend just to try to lighten the mood, if you will, a little bit. And I'm not sure that I didn't go too far. I guess I'll find out when I start using it. So um, it's a little irreverent in some places, but that might be good.
That's in right now. And my whole thing is like LinkedIn is famous for being cringe. It's famous for having really low quality self-serving content. So it's not that hard to exceed expectations,
Right.
and we're talking about neurodiversity. I have found that there are a lot of people in this world who are neurodiverse and who see the world a different way. And most of the conversation has not been from their point of view. So if you go and you start talking straight to the audience about what it's like to have ADHD or to be autistic or to be dyslexic or to be deaf or to be colorblind, or what I mean, like I deal with a lot of different content creators. We come from a lot of different angles. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's instructional. But yeah, if you just go out there as a real person and talk about what it's really like, you'll be surprised at how big of an audience there is for that.
It seems like that people that are really true to themselves. In other words, they're not putting on airs. They're just behaving as their true self. Seem to really connect better with people generally, because anytime you're authentic, that's half the battle. And it's so I feel like when you are showing your true self to the world in your whatever you're doing, whether it's work or personal or not, you just is sometimes it seems scary, but I think it's a much more likelihood that you're going to actually connect and get into some sort of conversation that is valuable to everybody.
Yeah, well, we can get deeper into this too, Sandy, because my whole approach is like you start with one audience member and you build out from there, you know. And my whole thing is like when I'm teaching people to create content, I'm teaching them usually to go online, find the people who are already talking about your topic, and just kind of start talking to them, and it's this weird balance where on the one hand you've got to be authentic and it's about who are you really, but on the other hand it's more about the audience than the performer, and
True.
um I think there's a lot of fear that people have about putting their image out there, putting their likeness out there. I don't want to create video content because what if somebody's going to make fun of me? But honestly, the audience isn't really thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. So if you're out there and you start talking about something that's relevant to them, or you start talking from a point of view that's familiar to them, that they've not heard many people talking about, you'll have their undivided attention, not because of who you are, but because you're talking about something that's really important to them,
Right.
and I come from an improv background where like the audience is part of the show. It's not like theater where you go there and you sit and you clap and then you get out and leave and there's this partition between you and the actors. You are constantly going to the audience, you're getting suggestions from them, you're incorporating them into the show. And that's my approach to content. And yeah, I have found numerous instances throughout my career where it's like, I see other content creators doing this too, where it's like you kind of make your audience the star, and you talk about the things that they wish other people would talk about. And yeah, that's how you build trust. That's how you build your following.
Well, it's one of the things that we talk about is in sales is make the customer the hero of the story, which is kind of related to what you just said. Well, I got a
Right.
question for you about your video, and it's called what's the name of it again? It's I know it's short videos that the course that you've got that
Oh, yeah. Well, so my course is the complete guide to selling on video. So
okay,
that's another
okay,
thing I teach. That's a different thing from video content, is
okay,
I teach video prospecting for sales.
okay.
So how do
Well,
you make these little short videos that people are actually going to respond to?
so I have been doing videos now for the last few months, and it's like you said, it's scary. I mean, it makes cold calling seem like it's for amateurs. And that's scary for most people, but it's not scary for me. But video, I feel naked. I feel um, like I'm exposed and vulnerable. But I know, like in this, going back and forth, having a conversation is very comfortable for me. So
Mhm.
what I've been doing on video is trying to imagine that I'm actually having a conversation, and I'm just, like you say, connect with an audience. Just pretend that I'm making eye contact with somebody and do it that way, because that's made it a lot more comfortable and a lot more natural feeling. Um, and I hear of so many people that know that video is an opportunity right now because it's very powerful, but very few people do it for the reasons we just stated. So if you can help people become comfortable doing it, that's probably half the battle, right?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because for me, I'm so much more comfortable talking to my phone than cold calling someone. You
Right.
know, um, my whole belief about video is there's a lot that salespeople don't have control over. But two things you do have control over is your first impression and your last impression. So
Right.
when I send a video out, I can't guarantee that someone's going to react to it the way that I want, but I can make sure that I'm showing up and I'm professional and I'm curious and I'm interested and I'm relevant, you know? And it's like when I get done with a sales meeting, all those decision makers I was talking to, they're going to go off into a room and fight with each other, and I'm not going to be there,
Right.
you know? Um, but I can send a video after the meeting saying like, hey, here's a summary, here's the 3 key takeaways of value that I think I can bring here, and it's like, as long as you can control those two, that's a lot more control than you have over, say, a cold call where um you're interrupting somebody, and it's one thing to connect and get the right person, which is hard enough.
Yep.
You have to do this really complicated little tango where they are like angry and distrustful of you, and you have to like reset them and get them having a conversation with you. Whereas I feel like if I send that video, even if you don't watch it, you know, um, maybe you don't watch it, you just see it come through. If I do pick up the phone and call you tomorrow, I'm not, hey, I'm some stranger interrupting your day. It's like, hey, I'm the guy who made a video for you,
Right.
do you have a second to chat about that? And like, um, I can always demonstrate respect. I can always introduce myself on my terms. And, I was taught, you know, in sales, your job is not to sell everybody at all times. Your job is to open the door and keep it open.
Right.
Whereas with cold calls, with cold emails, people shut you down, people chew you out. They say do not call, they unsubscribe. Um, at the very least, with the video, I can usually get them to open up to me.
Mm.
And maybe they're not ready to buy from me now. Maybe they're going to buy from me 4 months from now. That's fine. My thing is just when they are deciding, I want to be in the room and I want to have a chance to make my case.
So if you've okay, so you've initiated, they've they know who you are at this point. They're not ready. Would you continue to on your outreach? Do you continue to use video up to the next time you talk to them? And are you using other channels as well, or just video?
I use all channels. So, I mean, if I got to reach somebody, I'll reach whatever way is good for them. And,
Yeah.
again, we talk about like neurodiversity. Not everybody is cool with video. Not everybody likes that.
Right.
But I'll do something like, sometimes I'll send out the video and then whoever doesn't respond a couple days from then, I send them an email and I say, hey, I just realized maybe it's not convenient for you to watch a video. Here's the transcript.
Right. Great idea.
You know,
I think you
um,
should send some music videos. That's what I think you should do.
well, it's it's funny because I do a lot of comedy, and this is the other thing too, where it's like, I do a lot of video-based content. I do long-form video, I do live streams and podcasts, I do short-form video, and I do a variety of short-form videos. So some of that is instructional, some of it is entertaining, some of it is educational, some of it is motivational. But that's all part of like my marketing and sales strategies are fueled together, so if somebody ghosts on one of my meetings, but they're still interacting with the content, they're still showing up to the live events, I know I'm not out completely,
Right.
and I always say like the best place to handle objections is in your content.
Right.
you know um People hate salespeople because they hate pressure and they
Right.
hate being in a situation. They never want to be in a situation where they're trying to tell someone, I don't want to do this, and someone's trying to talk them into something against their will. And so I find it can be very hard to quote unquote objection handle on a sales call because it's like you're almost trying to outsmart each other, you're trying to
Right.
outwit each other. And with the content, there's not that. If somebody watches a video of me talking about something, they can agree with me or they can disagree with me, but they don't have to defend themselves against me. Like even if
Right.
they think I'm wrong, they can watch it and go, "Oh, well, I didn't agree with that," but whatever. They're actually in a better position to listen fully than when they've got me in a conversation and they're like, "Oh crap, I got to get this guy off the phone.
Right.
What am I going to tell him?"
Right. Well, I think when you talk about that you solve objections in the process, it's interesting because if you look at some of the very successful thought leaders in like sales that have they don't even do one-on-one coaching anymore. A lot of them leverage themselves through webinars and et cetera, et cetera. Well, most of them have a funnel process that answers concerns and objections along the whole way, and so that by the time if they want to do a call at the end, they're already pretty much pre-sold, and that doesn't happen in a lot of other arenas, and it would probably be a worthwhile endeavor for someone to try to figure out how to do that for business to business, because that's mostly business commuter business to consumer that works that way, but I don't know that you've still got humans that are the personas in B2B. So I'm surprised that at least I'm not aware of anybody really doing it though,
Yeah, some of
large
them are
scale.
starting to do it. Some of them are starting to learn. B2B companies don't change until they've done everything else first and then they'll change, you know? Um, my thing, and I get into arguments with sales leaders all the time about this stuff, but I just tell them, like, look at what the future holds, you know? Um, Look at Google clamping down on spam email. Look at Apple blocking, shady numbers. It's getting to the point where if you're not a trusted number, the phone doesn't even ring anymore, you know? And I
Yeah.
get these sales leaders who, like, they're not comfortable getting on video. They're not comfortable doing anything other than dialing the phones. And I say, hey, that's fine for you. But take a look at who's graduating college, take a look at who's populating these SDR teams. In a lot of cases, it is people who grew up on YouTube, and it's like the phone is very unusual for them. The
Well,
phone gives them
my
anxiety.
son will never answer the phone. I don't care. It's like you said, it's a generational thing. Like I'm so comfortable with I grew up with the phone, right? Like I
Yeah.
grew up like having a fight with my siblings to use the phone, right? So it was like a cool thing or whatever. My son would sooner lick the floor than answer the phone. I mean,
But you
so
can see why. You can see
yeah,
why. When you were young, it was a thing you looked forward to. It was like, oh, the phone's ringing. Maybe it's my friends.
right.
We don't have that anymore. If your phone rings, it's probably a scam trying to talk to you about some garbage about your car's warranty. And it's the same thing too with, like, email can be very powerful for sales, but I don't really use it for nurturing. I use, like, the content for nurturing,
Yep.
and basically it's like they spend like less time in the pipeline, but the velocity of the deal is much faster. And in a lot of ways, really what I'm doing is I'm just changing the order of the traditional sales process.
Mhm.
The traditional sales process was you email and call a bunch of strangers, you get them into a meeting, you do your opening pitch or whatever, and then you start nurturing. Then you
Right.
start sending them educational content and case studies and all this. I just move that nurturing state to before they get into the pipeline. You
Mhm.
know, I'm putting stuff out there. It's thoughtful stuff. It's educational stuff. It's about the problems that I can help them solve. And I just start looking for cues, and it's like, I call it consent-based selling, but it's like, there are people who are already talking about the problems I'm trying to solve. So if people are talking about video or sales or content or whatever, I'll find where my prospects like to hang out. Maybe
Right.
that's LinkedIn, maybe that's Twitter, maybe that's wherever. And I just get into conversations with them. I get in on the conversations that are already happening. If we get some good interactions and they hit the like button, I send them a connection request and say,
Right.
hey, Sandy, really enjoyed our interactions there. Hope we can connect. And then I just let them sit for a few weeks. I go out there, I engage with their content. If I see cool stuff popping up, I'm putting my content out there every day. I'm doing live events. And then it's like, yeah, if I know somebody, they know me, they've been qualified because they fit my ICP, I see they're on the guest list coming up for a show, I'll make a 30-second video
Right.
just being like, hey, glad to see you on the RSVP list for Thursday. I know your company is using Vidyard right now. That's actually what I coach, because I find that most teams are actually making like fewer than 10 Vidyards per rep. And my thing is you should be able to make 5 in an hour, So hope you enjoy the show. Let me know if you'd want to chat. And then I make it super easy if they want to meet with me. But now it's like, again, maybe they don't respond to that video, but if I call them on Friday, the day after the event, and it's like, hey, it's Chris, I sent you the video, I saw you're coming, they're not going to scream at me and tell me to never call. Of course they're going to talk to me. Even if the answer is like, hey, I'm not ready for this right now. My whole thing as a seller is I just need them open to me. I can't have them hiding from me and ghosting me and, like, too afraid to tell me what they actually think.
Well, and timing is a big part of success in sales. Now, the more you're out there and in the market, if you will, in the marketplace, the more likely it is that you're going to run into opportunities that is the right timing, obviously. But too many sellers are so insistent that buyers work on their timeline. That's just not the way it works. You've got to dance with them. They're not dancing with you, pretty much. Um,
Yeah. And
and
there
I
is a franticness. We make people frantic
Well, it's
And we
like,
put all this false pressure on them.
yeah, I mean, it's like it's analogous to dating, I think, in a lot of ways. Like you can come across as creepy, you can come across as desperate, you can come across as just I don't want anything to do with this person. Would they please stop calling me? Right. And you got to you know that's happening in B2B sales too. And I've been doing it for long enough that I can usually sense if somebody is telling me something because they want to get me off the phone and they want to try to be as polite as possible, or if it's a true objection. And sometimes, the classic one is, oh, just send me some information. 99% of the time that they're not interested, and that's fine. But and I'll say, look, hey, it's if you're not interested, that's fine. You can tell me. I'm a big boy. If you really do want me to send you something, then what's going to be relevant? And that sounds like a normal conversation. It's just, instead of like, oh, well, whatever we might say. Now, I was thinking back to something you said though about this. I'm fascinated with the videos, by the way, because I know how powerful they are. I've started to use them, overcome some fear. They're still not at the level of not professionalism, level of comfort that I want them to be, because I feel like the more comfortable I am, the better the connection is going to be, the more that they're going to be able to relate to it. So I know, like, for example, I first heard about you from Tom Slocum, and
Mhm.
Tom was singing your praises. And I don't remember, like, I know his videos weren't that good before he was using what he taught, what you taught him. What what's the number one thing that you can think of off the top of your head that helps create a level of comfort so that people are going to actually send videos on a consistent basis and not just send one off and then, oh, this is too hard or this is too scary?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna sound too simple, but looking at the lens is a big part of it. Everybody makes this mistake, including me when I started. People will record a video and they'll look at themselves. They'll make eye contact with themselves
There
on
are
screen.
videos about this, by the way, because I looked for them.
Yeah. You always want to look straight into the lens.
Right.
And it's this weird trick because it feels unnatural, because it is. But like, let's say you're a leader, you're a manager or something, and like one of your direct reports is telling you something very vulnerable. You want to like look at them to pick up their visual cues, but actually if you want to make them feel supported, you got to look into the little green light, not
Right.
at their image. And again, it's not a thing people realize, but if you're looking at your image, you're going to get these little micro movements in your eyes, and that reads as nervousness.
Right.
you know Whereas if you're looking into the lens the entire time, it just looks so confident. And especially like a lot of times people don't have the camera at the right point, so it's like you want your camera at eye level. You want to simulate one-on-one conversation. And I have just seen, I mean, it sounds crazy, but it's like I've seen people who they don't look confident, they look insecure, they look whatever, and then they just move the camera up a little bit and look straight into the lens, and they look like a completely different person.
Okay. Yeah, I wish I could remember. There was a woman that teaches. She's got a consulting business for um, media, and I think she was a newscaster before for like in a small market maybe. But she recommends that you put a sign up near your camera so you remember to use it as a focal point, because it's not natural. Like I'm looking in your eyes right now on my screen, which is, I know now I'm looking in your eyes probably in reality. So it's it's hard. I knew that it's also very distracting too, because you don't think somebody's connecting with you. You think, like, if it was a real life conversation and that was the angle they were looking at, you think, well, this person's just is completely disconnected from us or from me right now. So um it's yeah, just a little sign. I've got another sign over here for pace, because I start talking too fast. And there's the stereotypical fast talking salesperson. So I really want, also, if you slow your pace down, like ordinarily, I think the octave level goes up, and you don't want to sound screechy. I think especially, I don't want to be sexist, but I think women have a bigger challenge sometimes with that. I know my ex She has a pretty authoritarian type job, and she has to work on bringing her speech to a lower pitch than her normal. Like, she talks differently on the phone for business than she does for personal. It's a couple octaves different. So that's amazing though, that because that's something I've seen. I mean, put it this way: if you can find a video about it on YouTube about how to look at the camera, so you're looking at the person, then it's an issue for a lot of people. What else? What else is important from the standpoint of like length, and like message, like, because I've heard like
Yeah.
the sweet spot is like between 30 and 45 seconds probably.
Yeah, so shorter is better. The shorter the message is, the more likely it's going to come across. So there's a couple things I do differently with video than B2B does. So number one, I train people to talk to the camera differently. Like, I don't know, I feel like B2B companies almost they're teaching you to talk like it's this presentation. Whereas I talk to the camera like it's a friend. I talk to it like it's another person that's just like sitting in the room with me. Um, so that's a difference too. I always say I'm not on, I'm neutral. I'm open. That is what I'm going for here. And I've seen people send me all sorts of interesting prospecting videos where they're like, look, I was doing gymnastics and hanging from the ceiling and I did the video upside down. I got this to end. It's like, hey, that's awesome. That was clearly a lot of work. I'm not surprised you got the demo, but actually you might have gotten the demo by just sitting there talking conversationally to them for 30 seconds too, and I feel like, especially in sales, we get in our heads because a person will be worth a lot of money to our book of business. And that causes us to talk to them differently, right? Like they're up here and we're down here. And I've just learned, so it's like now I'm coaching people, I'm coaching executives, I'm coaching sales leaders. My last sales job, I was selling education technology, so I was mostly selling to PhDs, and yeah, this is what taught me, just because somebody has more money than you and more prestige than you, and they graduated from an Ivy League school or whatever, there's still power in talking to them like an equal. And it's like I feel like oftentimes sellers talk about the meeting like it's a prize they're expecting to be given, whereas I talk about it kind of like it's this party that's going on. I call it the green room effect, where it's just like, hey, I'm reaching out to you, I'm interested in you, here's this thing that I have access to that I think you might want to check out. Let me know if you want to, like, me to lift up the velvet rope and you can come check it out sometime. And this is actually, I know I'm rambling here, but one more
No, no,
thought
no, no.
on
I just want to remember. I have a question about what you're saying. I'm not going to interrupt you
yeah.
though. So go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
The last thing I'll mention here too is um I write the words you down a lot. And when I have one-on-one coaching, this is the thing I find all the time with with people who are new to videos. They'll make a video and they'll say, hey, I want to talk about this. Our company did this. We raised this much funding. We did this. And my thing is, it's about your audience member. You talk about their values, you talk about their goals, you talk about something about them. But it's like most of the video is me noticing them, observing something about them. And then, my little thing is at the end about what I do, kind of just to create curiosity. But it is a video about them,
So
not
when you
my
when you
company.
say you, what I'm hearing, and let me just make sure I'm on point here, is that it doesn't matter. The seller doesn't matter. What the buyer is who matters. And if you are clear about a problem that buyers typically have in the space they're in, is what is kind of the direction you're pointing at, I think. So if I know that you know people that are making video are scared, and I'm selling an anti-fear formula, that, you see what I'm saying? Like, I know that making videos are scary, so I've got these pills that'll solve your fear. Thought you might be interested in them, and let me know. No big deal either way, kind of thing. Is that right?
Kinda. So there's a couple things I would change on that slightly. The elephant in the room problem is one thing I talk about. I talk about goals and values a lot too, because um the problem with starting with the problem is sometimes people aren't ready to admit they have a problem.
Okay.
Um, One thing I've noticed is a lot of the times the people that need the most help learning about video don't realize they're bad at it yet, you know? And I never want to come in assuming I already know their problems. I've always got this kind of air of curiosity about me. But the goals and values you can find pretty easily. This is stuff you can find in press releases or social media posts or mission statements. And I find again, this is a thing where it's like those things don't happen out of nowhere. These companies spend all this time, they paint their value statements on the wall, they beat it home into their employees' heads. So if you just come in there already knowing what that value statement is and using that as the reason why you reached out to them, you're just one step ahead of all the rest of the sellers. And
Right.
I will say, so what I do with my business, with my training, with my content on LinkedIn is decidedly non-political, right? I don't touch politics with a 10-foot pole, but I was heavily influenced by a political study. So I had read a study about the 2020 election. It was a group of researchers, and they were trying to figure out what kind of ads change a swing voter's mind. This is a very small
Interesting.
group of people who voted for one party in 2016 and they voted for the opposite party in 2020. Super small, but super consequential segment of the population. So they studied what kind of ads work on people like this. And they found that it did not matter if they were a Biden voter or if they were a Trump voter. The ads that were overly produced did not work. If it was a lot of swirling special effects and celebrities and whatever, they didn't trust it. But when it was a person talking straight to the camera, it was like, hey, I'm a Trump voter and here's why. Or like, hey, I'm in Florida, I'm a farmer, I'm voting for Joe Biden, here's why. That's what people found was trustworthy. And once I heard that, I started looking through my feed, and you could see it yourself. All these billion-dollar brands, they're all doing ads where they're like, whoa, we're just like hanging out. What's going on? And like they're trying to look like a regular person because that's what people trust right now.
Well, the first time I ever remember any ads like that go back to a long time ago with Howard Stern, when he was like the first guy that I can think of who was reading his own ads, and they were brilliant, and it was just him talking. It wasn't salesy. It was just like, hey, blah blah blah, and it was Howard Stern. He's got this great voice, and that's kind of what you're talking about, right? I mean, it's just it's not Howard Stern the persona talking. It's Howard Stern just a regular guy talking.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I wish people Googled stuff more often. That would make life easier. But it's like you can go out there and talk about something, and your audience's response is not going to be to immediately doubt you and be like, prove to me you're qualified to talk about that. Like, if you go start talking about something that's relevant to them, they're probably just going to think, oh, this guy's sounds pretty smart. He's talking about like the real stuff that's like out there, And again, it's like, I tell people, it's like, I don't care if you're selling to a millionaire. I don't care if you're selling to somebody who, went to Stanford or whatever. Like, they're thinking about how they got to sell their rental property because it's losing money, and they're
Right.
thinking about this new initiative at work that failed. And, they're thinking about their doctor told them to cut back on red meat or what, they're thinking about all these things with their own life. They're really not sitting there looking for your flaws.
No, you're absolutely right. I think my son's 18, and he's always been kind of a little bit self-conscious, like just teenagers are. They want you to think they're supremely confident, but they're usually overcompensating. And I've tried to tell him, look, these people are not concerned about you. They're worried about their own selves, and are they fitting in? Are they comfortable? So you're gonna be okay. Don't worry. And I think that it's naturally, we all focus inward when outward's probably where we're going to learn more. Um, it's not easy, you know. And I, on the other hand, when I was a kid, like, and I think this actually has something to do with ADHD because, like, I'm comfortable in almost every situation. Like, I can relate to people no matter what color they are, what sex, what sexual orientation, their economic situation. I've always just been able to connect with people pretty well, and apparently that's one of our superpowers. Like, it's like we can be chameleons, you know. And that when, although that sounds a little bit disingenuous, as I'm never, you know, I'm always sincere. But I'm always interested in people and kind of, you know, what's going on with them. I already know what's going on with me. I don't care about that, right? So, um, it's it is interesting. We've got, you know, I whether you're a fan of this guy or not. I mean, I was watching it, and this was from a couple of years ago, but I happened to see it the other day. It was Joe Rogan interviewing Kanye West, right? And apparently, the I could tell from the interview that they had spent time in conversation before. This was not the first time they talked. And Joe Rogan said, you know, one thing I've noticed about you is your brain works differently than most people. Like, you think different about stuff. It sounds crazy in a way, but Kanye West said, look, when I'm thinking about stuff, it's usually there's at least three dimensions in my head, sometimes more than that. I see things differently than I guess most other people do from what I can tell from conversations. And you know, I know that he's ADHD. I do know that. And I think he's on the spectrum probably also, from what I understand. And he's definitely got some challenges with that stuff, but he also has superpowers that other people don't have, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he's going through a rough time right now, and he's said some things that I certainly don't agree with.
Exactly.
Um, but like, you know, I guess my whole thing that I come from is like the human experience is there's a lot of variety in it, you know, and my whole thing like with LinkedIn, and like I pick on LinkedIn a lot, everyone picks on LinkedIn a lot because you know, it's either like the super like, hey, I make six figures a month, you know, here's my routine. Um, or like, you know, it's the crying CEO where it's like this super dramatic quest for attention, you know. And my whole thing, and my thing as a comedian too, is like there's a million emotions out there besides just extreme joy and extreme sadness, you know. And if you lean into any of them, it can be very interesting, uh you know, when's a time where you were particularly curious, you know, what's something that makes you feel, you know, I don't know, confused. But you know, there are different things. It's like there's all these emotions that you can lean into that are so, there's just so much there, you know. And like I don't know, I feel like we're kind of exiting this phase where it was all about having the right answer. You know, I feel like that's what the rise of Google was throughout my life, is like, oh, cool, now there's this place we can go to find the right answer to every question. And once we had that, it wasn't enough anymore, you know. And I think you're seeing this too with the new generation. There's less onus on being perfect and having the quote unquote correct answer about everything, and more curiosity about just like, what does it mean to be a human being?
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, you know, growing up, we didn't have Google, obviously, and you know, so if I wanted to learn about something, like if something was interesting to me, I would have to write it down, and you know, we went to the library once a week, and then I could, you know, try to learn about stuff. You with Google, you could just, you know, punch it in, and you know, the level of trust that we gave Google, and like Wikipedia. I mean, I saw, as a matter of fact, I saw an entry in Wikipedia today that was regarding a friend of mine. It's absolutely incorrect, but you know, unless you knew, you wouldn't know, right? So it's like, how do we, do you, how do we fact check all that stuff? Like, you've got to be, um, you know, cognizant of the fact that there are people that just put stuff out there that's false. I don't know what they want to get out of it, other than, you know, chaos. But it's, you know, it's too bad that we have to worry about stuff like that. Let me ask you one other thing though about this. whole idea of, you know, the 6 figure a month guy that you just mentioned, it seems like stories, you know, are one thing that we relate to a lot. And the story of the person who struggled and overcame these struggles and speed bumps and then became, in other words, they weren't always this certain way. I think that those stories are compelling because they're more relatable for most people. If all you do is talk about how great you are, then, and it's true, then a lot of people have trouble relating with that story. Related to that, um, you know, some of the best posts that I've read, and they were sincere, were people that truly made themselves vulnerable and said, "Look, you know, this is my story," and you know, it's interesting how we as humans respond to when someone makes himself vulnerable in that kind of forum. It can be very powerful. But if you know if it's bullshit, then it's completely it's going to do a lot more destruction to you than it would have been if it had been true. But so in video, how do you make yourself vulnerable in 15 seconds or 30 seconds? How do you, like, when you've only got that little space to work in, and you're what you want to educate or you want to inform, how do you choose, uh, for lack of a better word, how do you do that? Like, in other words, how do you make yourself there's enough information in 15 seconds reel, in other words, that you're there's going to be value on the other end, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yes, I do that in a few ways. You know, one, it's like some of my stuff is just straight to camera, and you know, some of it is quite serious, you
Right.
know. I did a video once about gifted kids and about how that can kind of screw you up, you know, and um yeah, it was just one take to the camera about how, you know, people hear the word gifted and they think privileged, but actually gifted kids are across all walks of life. And if you don't have the right support system, your intelligence doesn't help you at some point. You know, your mind becomes a prison that you can't escape. And, you know, you stop trying to use your mind for good and you start trying to shut it off, you know. And it was one of these things where it was like just talking about that in very blunt and real terms, you know, there's a vulnerability in that. Um, I also use vulnerability for my comedy a lot. I have discovered, you know, I used to be writing and directing shows for other people. Now I'm the entire ensemble, and I will often do characters and really kind of, you know, multi-camera, multi-shot sketches where I'm playing multiple people. And oftentimes my videos will have me in some kind of difficult situation, and you know, I'm also playing my boss who's chewing me out or whatever. But just the fact that I am sitting there just kind of absorbing the abuse, you know, the audience can identify with that, you know. And I believe that like comedy comes from like a opposing energies. And, you know, one of my favorite comedians of all time was Chris Farley. You know, I was a huge Chris Farley fan, Second City guy. And yeah, he always had this thing where he was, on one hand, he would be this very sweet, vulnerable, childlike person. And then he would be this raving lunatic, you know, and he would kind of switch back and forth. And the more vulnerable and real he was when he was being soft, the greater license he got to be a lunatic when he would tap into his crazy lunatic side. And this is what I try to do in my comedy and try to do in my business content, where it's like, look, as long as the video ends with me at the desk, like explaining the lesson, you know, if that explanation part is really professional and really thoughtful and really strategic, that gives me greater license to go crazy with the comedy, and the vulnerability is the same thing. The more I demonstrate to the audience that I don't think I'm above them, that I'm not making fun of them, I don't think they're stupid, the more that I'm just trying to show them this is a real thing that I've experienced, the greater license I have to go out there as a ridiculous character and like turn up the absurdity, because they
Right.
know it's grounded in something real.
Right. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. It was a real pleasure talking to you. If people want to get in touch with you, you've got you've got a couple different offerings that can be of huge benefit to companies. You've got your video stuff. You've also got I think you've got one-on-one coaching and then corporate coaching for a group. Tell us a little bit about that, and then tell us how we can get in touch with you, how we can reach out to you and find you.
Yeah,
If we need to.
so you can look for me on LinkedIn, Chris Bogue. The easiest way is ring my bell, follow me on LinkedIn. I post new content all the time. I also do coaching. So I do one-on-one coaching for individuals. I do team training for both video prospecting and for content creation. You can find my course. I have a course on video prospecting. You can purchase that at chrisbogue.io.
It's BOGUE.
Yes.
Yeah.
CHRISBOGUE.io. And yeah, that's anybody who wants to get started on video prospecting. I break it down across 6 modules. It's on-camera performance, sales strategy and LinkedIn growth, script writing, editing, and then outbound, So by the end of it, you'll have your first 25 videos shot, ready, delivered with thumbnails and subject lines, captioned, delivered on LinkedIn and Gmail to your
Nice.
pipeline, because the first 25 is the hardest.
Yep.
After that, it gets a lot easier. There really hasn't been a lot of scholarship about this yet, so that's why I am out there teaching it myself. So you can check that out. And I'm also a friendly guy, so if anybody wants to DM me or chat with me or send me a prospecting video, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and send me a connection request.
Well, all right. Well, listen, thank you so much. I think we're gonna have to do this again at some point. Is I've got there's so many different things going through my head. I've Oh yeah, we went way over. So
Hey,
but,
thanks for having me on the show. It was a great
and no,
time.
no, it was a lot of fun. Appreciate it. And I will see you. I think you're with Jen Allen this Thursday night. Is that right?
Next Thursday.
Next
Yes.
Thursday. Okay, very good. Okay, awesome. I look forward to that.
Awesome. See you
Thank you
there,
so
man.
much, Chris. All right, bro. Let me see here. That was fun.
Yeah, man. I love this shit.